obligations to the fact that the framework actually needs an intelligent regulatory customer.
We happen to be out here, say for the autonomous driving, self-driving vehicles. We have here today
Jessica Guccioni from the Law Commission.
Okay, my people, this is Jessica from the panel discussion. So, I just want to ask you a few questions. Do you want to just state what the event is about today for my people out there who's watching this, right?
Yeah, so there's different streams on ethics and security, which is the part that I'm in, and some more about the use cases and what we will actually be getting from self-driving vehicles in the future. And we're trying to bring different perspectives. So I think it's organized by Zenzik and other colleagues with a public interest kind of backing, and trying to demystify what self-driving might be about, and seeing whether this future we've been promised and that people have been talking about might actually materialize, and how that might happen.
On the law side, so what do you do on the law side of automated vehicles? Just say something,
Absolutely. So we've worked on building a authorization scheme so that a self-driving vehicle cannot be put on the road unless it has been looked at by a regulator and passed accepted standards, because you wouldn't want different companies with different risk appetites. We can all know it, it can go from Tesla to Volvo, right? They're very, very different. And you don't want to leave it up to individual companies to decide how much risk they want to take, or how many fatalities are acceptable, or how it should behave, in particular situations that are at the edge of the law. So you want to have a third-party verification of the self-driving capabilities, which currently does not exist. So we've suggested building that into the scheme. So it would be illegal to drive a self-driving vehicle onto the roads without it being authorized first. We've also looked at the question of liability of individuals in the vehicles. So for example, at the moment, the whole system is premised on the driver being responsible for how it drives. But of course, if we're moving to a self-driving world, you push the button and suddenly the vehicle is driving itself. If something happens during that period, you should not be responsible for it. And we need to provide a legal shield, basically, for users to make sure that they won't be blamed. And certainly if a hairy situation comes up and something difficult comes up, you don't want the vehicle to suddenly hand you back control at no notice at all, and to deal with the difficult situation. So there are already regulations that mandate like a minimum time period for a transition, but these need to be enforced, they need to be scrutinized, and we also need to look at different use cases. So that's like another big part of it. We're very sick of the whole blame the human approach. At the moment when there's an issue with the self-driving car, and we've seen it happen with the fatalities that have already happened, you always blame the safety driver for not picking it up. Instead, we need to focus on a system that really shines the light on the company that is putting these vehicles out there, and we need to have accountability.
So, I want to take you back to a time, right? So, the Wright brothers, right?
Sorry?
The Wright brothers.
Oh, yeah, the flying.
The flying, right? So, when they came up with this possibility of having something up in the sky that could transport people, right? Everybody laughed. Now, 100 years ago, a decade ago, if you ask someone, there's going to be a car that's going to be there, people still laugh. Now we're getting to a position where we're going to have a vehicle that's going to transport us, not just only transport us, but drive by itself. What do you think people's skeptical views are, and why do you think they still believe that, and why do you think people's mentality about it has changed, would you say?
Well, I think you have very different views. You have some people that think that self-driving cars are obviously the future, and in a way it's impossible not to have them, given that we're seeing so much more automation in our lives in so many different areas. We're used to seeing things that previously humans did for us suddenly being taken over by technology in factories, and also our pilots in planes. They obviously, they're still there, but we know that most of the trip is actually conducted on autopilot, if you will, and just with smaller interventions by our humans. On the other hand, we also know that driving is such a complex task, and there are so many things which, since we were little, we were trained to recognize each other and identify objects and see each other, and those things that are very obvious to us as humans are not necessarily a given for a system. So as I was mentioning, for example, I've been on several rides on self-driving vehicle trials where
You go on, go on, go on.
I was just going to say where the presence of leaves, for example, just a gust of wind bringing some leaves in, would actually cause the vehicle to stop. That is not the reaction that a human would have. Like a competent driver wouldn't necessarily have any kind of issue with leaves coming into its path. On the other hand, the performance of these systems doesn't have any reaction time. So if anything came in, they're able to react, at a faster way than a human would. I mean, the advantage of that is somehow less now because we have automated emergency braking just in regular driver assistance systems, but there are so many other things that technology can do better than humans. It doesn't get tired, it doesn't get distracted, and it doesn't make stupid choices, or it shouldn't. And I'm stressing the shouldn't because, of course, nothing is perfect. But, the idea of, like, deciding to, push through, like, the light is just yellow to red, speed limit, for example. Those are things which you can more easily program out of the system. And I remember when I first started in this area, one of the interviews that I was listening to of people that were pushing for this technology was the mother of a child that basically died in a drunk driving incident. And when you hear those kinds of stories, you understand that as much as self-driving might feel a bit fantastical and a bit of a future, but when you've been directly impacted in your life, lost a loved one, or you see even just the fatalities that we have on our roads, if we have ways in which we can decrease that and improve your likelihood of getting home safely, then of course we need to embrace and investigate it without making excessive claims about the fact that overnight it's going to get better, but that's the path that we're on.
You're on the law side of autonomous vehicles, right? So what do you think about the ethics of vehicles? And I want to ask you the questions before that, right? How does it feel to be in a vehicle when being a vehicle that's self-driven? Did you get paranoid? Did you feel uncomfortable? Did you feel like this don't feel real? Like, how was your initial feeling, would you say?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a different experience. And the thing is, there are so many different types of self-driving vehicle that are being trialed. So you have some that are more like a shuttle. And so it's a bit like being on a bus. And I think in a bus or a bit being like on the tube or a monorail, we're quite used to automation in those contexts. I think in that context, it feels a bit more normal and usual. On the other hand, when you're in a vehicle that has a steering wheel and you see the steering wheel turn on its own and you're in a kind of urban environment shared with other vehicles in a more peer-to-peer kind of way, it is a different experience, right, to have no person in the driving seat. I think I'm quite trusting in general, so I think I quite quickly sort of got used to the idea of there not being a physical driver, but of course all the trials have a lot of other safety mechanisms in place to try and reduce the risk. So sometimes they'll have a chaser car behind, so that, for example, if the vehicle, as does happen quite often, brakes quite unexpectedly, there is a vehicle behind that knows to keep a good distance, and it means that you're less at risk of actually being, like rear-ended. In terms of, sorry, your first question again, you were asking me about.
It was about the ethics.
Oh yes.
The ethical.
Yes. That's a great question.
The ethical questioning behind self-driving cars and the mistakes it could make, cybersecurity. If you just touch briefly on that, that'd be great.
No,
Thank
that's
you.
excellent. Thank you for bringing it up. I think this question is too often just dismissed as being a thought experiment and not being relevant to the development of self-driving. I think it has been exaggerated in the past. So I think the classic, I don't know if you've seen The Moral Machine by MIT. They did this experiment where they got a lot of people to look at a bunch of different scenarios and decide what a vehicle should do if it found itself in a moral dilemma type situation. So you're going along, too late to brake safely, so you have to run someone over. Is it going to be the doctor, or is it going to be the child that is on the road? Like, you have to choose. Is it going to be the doctor? Is it going to be a child on the road? And all sorts of variations. They even did it with animals. Some people picking to run over a human instead of an animal because of their beliefs or preferences. So those are, they bring a smile sometimes when you look at them and you're like, well, they're just people's preferences. It's not really even morality in many ways. But there is a seed there, I think a very useful question to bring out, which is these vehicles are going to take actions that have value judgments built into them.
So can you explain to someone, or people out there who's watching, what is value, what is it again? Value
judgment.
What's value judgment?
So making a decision that has social implications for it. So for example.
So does it follow an algorithm?
The thing is that the algorithms are made by people, and people reflect their own beliefs and prejudices in the work that they do. We all do it. The best we can do is try and be more honest with ourselves and learn more about the biases that we have, so that we at least recognize them if we can't eliminate them completely, but then manage accordingly. So for example, if you are building a system and it's meant to look out for vulnerable road users, but all your people that you're looking out for, none of them is on a wheelchair. So you've told me that you know how to deal with vulnerable road users, but then your data set does not have anyone that is disabled, or maybe anyone that is black, or anyone that is wearing different kind of gear that isn't just trousers. And so like the leg movement detection is different, you know, if you're wearing long robes versus trousers. So it's those biases that we might not even recognize in building a data set. You might think, hey, I've been pretty, you know, broad in what I'm looking at, or it might even be that you're testing in a particular area which has a predominance of a particular kind of person, and then you're not really, you can't know whether that vehicle is safe in a different area that has a completely different demographic, a totally different flow of people. And so when we're testing these vehicles and when they're proven or said to be safe, we need to push further on that and understand, well, how have you tested it? What kind of decisions is it making? And making sure that we try as much as possible, knowing that it's difficult, to take out the biases that might be involved and try and be as inclusive and broad as possible in how we assess them.
So, you know, I know you're quite busy, right? You know, you've got other people to speak, so I'm holding you up. I'm so sorry, right?
No, it's
you know,
a pleasure to be.
You know, you look at, you know, I don't know if you've seen movies I, Robot, right? Will Smith, you know,
yes,
he's half
familiar.
Yeah. So in that movie, the robot is controlled by some, you know, big entity, right? You know, just like Terminator, Skynet, right? So I want to ask you the cybersecurity consequences, like the position of a car, autonomous car, right, being hacked by entities out there, people out there, or someone out there who could just go in and break the system. What's your opinion? I might not be wording it right, but I hope you understand, you know?
No, absolutely, no. It's a huge issue. We've published several papers on the topic, and the worry about terrorism has been a prime concern among journalists and among the public, and it's a very fair concern. It's a perfect challenge to pose. I think you certainly can't stop cyber attacks from happening, so you've got to focus on the systems you have in place to try and prevent them. That has to be one strand, but also deal with them when they do occur, so make the system as secure as possible, but then also look at fail-safes where you know, it might be able to get through your initial security, but making sure that you're reducing the negative consequences of that breach. So I think you probably need just a very layered approach to it, and cybersecurity experts that we've been speaking with are very much, you know, thinking about these problems and these issues. The question of hacking is also interesting, because I understand from conversations with colleagues that it's already possible with our current vehicles today, because they have.
It's possible with current vehicles.
Yes, exactly, because there's so much automation in our vehicles already, the so-called drive-by-wire, you know, that's not just mechanical transmission of commands, that people can actually hack into vehicles and already interfere with them. But as you said, it's the difference between a current vehicle and an automated vehicle would be that the scope for doing that would obviously be greater. The more automation, the more technology you've got in it, the more you can mess it up, right? So it's an absolutely fair challenge that the questions and the possible risks are much greater for self-driving, so they need much greater fail-safes and much greater precautions to deal with it. But it is absolutely top of the agenda.
Yeah, I know we need to go, right? Just a quick question. So what are, you know, just wanted to ask you, what are some of the challenges that you've been facing with autonomous vehicles on the law side? You know, so regulations obviously, right? But can you just break down a few points? That'd be great, you know.
I think the big one, given that you know, very call to go, is that they're not here yet. So there's this whole question of how do you try and resolve an issue that hasn't already presented itself fully? You don't have all the evidence. So you have to balance the idea that you can't just be reactive and wait for these vehicles to come and then build regulation for them, because it's too late. Like, rightly, the public expects solutions to be put out first, but then we do not yet have enough of a evidence base. We're building it with trials, but we don't yet have such an understanding of how these vehicles are going to function solution in the real world to be able to say what solution is best or what actually works. So there's this really tricky balance of planning for the future, but also knowing that we're going to predict it wrong, because no one is prescient. No one can play God in terms.
There has to be a trial stage, right? When it does come out, there has to be a trial stage to see how the public or society as a whole, right, do see autonomous vehicles, right? Just because we're gonna go, right? I want to ask you just the last question, right? My people out there, you know, Jessica's being great. Half the thing that she was saying, I did get, but some of the things I have to rewatch this video for me to understand, right? So I'm just telling you the truth, right? So how long before we're gonna have a society that's going to have autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles out there, like around the world, the globe? How long?
I think it's going to depend, and it's going to be different in different areas.
Throw me a number.
That's the problem. I think if you try and put a number on it, you're already kind of changing what the issue is. I think the real question is you will have some autonomy. Okay. There's already some systems that have been approved in Germany, you know, already with Mercedes, for example, and in Japan. But the question is, how broad is it? What kind of automation is it? It's going to be very different. So it's like the animal kingdom, very diverse. They're around, but if you try and describe one animal, if I tell you an animal is like a zebra, then you come up onto an elephant, you're saying, hey, it's not what you told me about. It's like, yeah, they're different. So automation has a very broad range. It's a big zoo. And there's a lot of different types of animals and like different ways in which it will show up in our lives, and hopefully for the better and improve our understanding of it.
My people out there who's watching, we just had Jessica, you know, she deals with the law side, right? The law side of, you know, autonomous vehicles, and she's very intelligent, my people. She's very articulate, very intelligent, and she knows what she's talking about. It's been a pleasure, and I just want to say thank you so much, and I wish you all the best. You know, I think what you're doing is great, and I'm into tech, but it's just great to come out here and see like-minded people and people of different ethnicities and colors coming out here and representing a movement. It is a form of activism, right? So thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But sort of moving us on to the upside.